Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is Game 7 from the 2016 World Chess Championship match between challenger Sergey Karjakin playing on the white end and our current champion Magnus Carlsen. 6 games in the books, 6 draws. Someone has to fall at some point. Let's see what would happen in Game 7. d4 by Karjakin. This is a first in the match. All other games we saw e4 by Karjakin. d4 was only played one other time, and that was in Game 1, Carlsen having the white pieces. Play follows in this Game 7 with d5, c4, Slav Defense now on board. This is a new territory in the match. Knight c3, knight f6, e3, a6. This may strike many as a bit odd. For a moment, black got away from developing. What is a point behind it? Well, take note of the pawn tension, c4 versus d5. The c pawn has more options than the d pawn. There is some value in having that tension resolved sooner than later for black. a6 facilitates a b5 advance, which adds some fuel to c4 and will force white to make some decision with the c pawn. Bishop d3 follows. D takes c only now that the bishop has moved once. White, of course, recaptures. e6, knight f3. Black strikes in the center. Opens a new square for the queen knight as well. Castles. Black grabs some queenside space. Prepares to fianchetto. Does just that. And now d takes c. And knight c6. So for the moment, this pawn is not picked up. White's up a pawn. And how to follow from here. Move 11. In the game, we had knight to d2, which is looking to hop into the e4 square. One interesting line on this move 11 would have been to initiate go for a queen exchange first, and then follow up with this surprising move, b4. Now, can black not just grab that pawn? Well, yes, but now this allows a4. Some may ask, well, why not play a4 and not give up your b pawn? Well, if you play a4 now, there's b4. Okay. There's even an interesting line from this point with the knight hopping in here. Can get a little bit wild. But by playing b4 first and knight takes b, a4 can no longer be met with b4. This position is opening up some. It's not some significant advantage here for white, but there's some it makes some sense to create these pawn exchanges and have the position open up when your opponent is, 2 moves away from castling? I think, there's some value here in creating these pawn exchanges and creating more possibilities for the pieces that are out and about. Maybe there's a way to try and take advantage of the black king position. There certainly will not be a way to take advantage of the white king position. So that would have been an interesting way to follow up at this point here, to exchange queens and then this b4 or even a4 idea on the queen side. Instead, knight d2 is played, focusing on e4. Bishop takes, knight e4. Pair of knights are exchanged. The bishop drops back to offset the knight, watching over his forward movement. White looks to complete development. This knight is hanging. It's unprotected. Knight b4. Black looks to dictate play some. Throwing a quick punch at the knight. Where should he go? c3. g3. He can't move forward. What should white do? Bishop f3. It's important that the knight not budge. if he goes away, let's say g3, what is white doing now? The rook is under fire, and if the rook moves, the a-pawn's falling. That can be very awkward. This knight on e4 has an important responsibility. You don't want to allow the bishop to get on this main diagonal and throw a punch at the rook. This is an invasive piece on b4, having pressure on the a2 pawn. Bishop f3 it is. Black now castles. Bishop a3. There's also bishop to b2. Bishop a3 in the game. And now rook to c8. Now, I thought in this position, instead of rook to c8, a better move would have been to play queen to b6. This struck me as quite natural. Why is that move not played? Now, one of the ideas I had, here was some of my thoughts on this move. I thought queen b6 to play rook to d8 next and attack the queen. And also, with the queen on b6, she's defending the bishop. So, you know, there isn't some knight move with check and then the bishop is picked up. I thought, why not do this? Well, let's have a look at what's a good continuation reply to queen to b6 at this moment. White can capture the knight, and after the recapture, still go in for knight f6. This is a cool variation. The knight must be captured, as otherwise there would be a fork. So knight f6 captures. What's the idea? Well, bishop takes bishop, queen takes bishop, black's up a piece. See the follow-up? Queen g4, and you get the piece back. This isn't a decisive advantage, but it's certainly white who is for choice. Safer king, better king shelter than black's. Thought that was a cool variation. I was trying to figure out why queen b6 was not there. Seemed natural enough, but yeah, there is this line, very forcing line. Capture the knight, checks, another capture, and then in the end a fork. Okay, in the game, rook c8. Knight f6 is still played in this case. Bishop takes. We go down a forced sequence here, many captures coming up. Bishop takes bishop. Bishop takes rook. For the moment, black is up the exchange. Well, no, up a rook. Bishop takes knight is the follow-up. So right now, black is up the exchange, but take note, both bishops are pointing at the rooks. This exchange will be won back. Bishop f6. Bishop takes the rook on f8. This is the better attempt by white right here to capture the rook on f8 than c8. It may seem a bit counterintuitive to capture a rook that isn't doing anything, right? Of the two rooks, isn't the rook on c8 the more active rook? Why not take him? Well, suppose bishop takes the rook on c8. Black can exchange queens and then recapture like this, and we have same color bishop ending and a rook each, of course. This is a completely equal position. Compare this with the move played in the game. Bishop takes f8. Queen takes queen, rook takes queen. Of course, the rook now has to recapture and get out of the line of fire. Rook takes f8. How is this different? Well, now we're working with an opposite color bishop ending, but white is more active, and white is on move, and white is ready to pick up a pawn, and does. Bishop takes a. White's up a pawn. b4, and what to do from here? We're at move 22. Opposite color bishop ending. Not too much is happening on the king side. Symmetrical pawn structure on the king side. Let's consider the queen side. Will not be the first time I'm drawing reference to this idea with the pawn structure, but we have an instance of, okay, well, white is up one pawn, but b4 restricts these two pawns. How do you ever get the a pawn rolling? Rook c1. First, a flight square for black before committing the rook. Rook c2 is defending the a pawn so that on rook a8 the bishop can now move. Rook is there to defend the pawn. Rook d8, bishop e2, black gets the king towards the center. And let's see how play follows. Just getting the king a little bit more towards the center, both sides. Something has to happen on the king's side. Let's have a look at these pawn advances. First, f4. Do know that white is, of course, the side trying to win, being up a pawn. It's not the healthiest pawn plus around, the a2 pawn. It's tough to get him rolling. But regarding the kingside pawn movements, ideally, white wants to keep the pawns on dark squares, maintain dark square control. Playing a move like e4, that weakens. I mean, what just happened there? White just moved a pawn off of a dark square. Dark squares are weakened. Black can hop into d4 and maybe even anchor him in there with e5. Okay, so in the game it was f4, maintaining some more dark square control, moving up the board, grabbing some space. h6, king f3, ever so slight improvement with the king. Black is just sitting. Let's see how white is trying to make progress here. g4. g5, this puts a dent in white's pawn structure. If ever captures, this isn't helping white. King e4, rook to c8, and it is at this point the players agreed to a draw. Even though white is up a pawn, there isn't a great way to make use of that pawn plus. In the event of some structural shift like f5, black simply sits. He doesn't budge with this pawn, and for as long as the e6 pawn is around, these two squares, d5 and f5, are under control. The bishop has e5. A wall is formed. The king cannot move forward. It's as far as he can go. He's in the center, but it's as far as he's getting. And yeah, there isn't a great way to activate the rook. Black can always come over here and target the a pawn. One thing to note here is, well, here's one of the things that I was thinking about doing just instinctually for a couple moments in this endgame with opposite color bishops, and that is to anchor the bishop on the c3 square. Now, many times a move like this can be quite good because, well, I kind of view it as, well, the bishop is restricting the rook very well, right? He can't see the c-file squares as much now, and he can't come over to d2 anymore. But there's an issue with this bishop c3 move, and this is really the last point I really wanted to make about this endgame. It allows white to play a4, and because there's pressure on this bishop, that means black cannot capture on a3. Yes, that is a move. En passant, for those of you that may be new to the game, it's a move. Have a look at it. Check out the Rules of Chess video. Yeah, you can capture there, and well, you couldn't capture there, excuse me, because of rook takes bishop. That's my point. A4, if A4 is in there, if the pawn is on A2, he's unhealthy, but when he's on A4, this would be something. Okay? The pawn is just a moment or two away from being linked with the bishop and 2 steps away from queening. This would be something to play for if the pawn on A2 can get to A4, but that is never a possibility. Black is not stepping foot on C3 and allowing an A4 advance. He's well aware that that would be a good follow-up. So there really isn't a great way to make progress here. I mean, black just goes back. I'm not even sure what the rook to d2 move would be doing. He's not threatening to enter. All of these squares are covered, and black can always offer a rook exchange as well, and this will be a dead drawn position. Bishop stays on this diagonal. There's never an a-pawn move, and again, once more, we have a case of one pawn restricting two. It's definitely not a position where white is really up a pawn. It's not any forward progress to be made in this one. So 7 games in now, 7 draws. Let's have a look at the tail of the tape here. My little routine here. Okay, yep, another very accurate one. In 1995, Anand versus Kasparov had 8 games in a row. Their match started off with 8 draws before they had a decisive game. Inaccuracies, mistakes, blunders, 1 inaccuracy by Karjakin. Nothing here for Carlsen. 5 centi-pawn loss for Karjakin, 6 for Carlsen, and as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, someone will have to fall in order for a world champion to be determined. I know there is this thought where if there's 12 draws, that means Carlsen retains the title. No. In the event of 12 draws, do know that there would be a group of 4 rapid games. A best of 4 rapid games if it's drawn after that. A group of 2 blitz games if it's drawn after that. Another group of 2 blitz games if it's still drawn after that. 1 game known as an Armageddon. White has 5 minutes, black has 4 minutes, and drawing odds. Okay, well, feel free to leave any feedback to this video. How much longer are we going to go with this drawing match, 2016 drawing match? Are we going to break Anand Kasparov's record for most number of draws in a row? Again, someone will have to fall at some point. Will it come down to an Armageddon? Feel free to leave any of your thoughts in the comment section below, as usual. And I hope you're able to take something away from this one still. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.